All right, so I'm in the shop and I'm working on something, one of my jobs that I do a bunch of coasters for a company, and that's what I'm making right now. I'm gonna turn the camera around in a second. I'm gonna show you kind of a real basic process. If you have any woodworking skills, it's basically like making cutting boards. We glue all the strips together, cutting boards. But the real reason I'm showing you what I do will get me to the point of the tutorial video of what to use scrap wood for, and maybe just ideas of making scrap projects. So I'm gonna turn this camera around, I'm gonna show you where I'm at in my process, and we will get going and hopefully make a really cool scrap wood project video, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so basically I just take a bunch of these strips that I've cut down over the years out of this sort of stuff. I mill it all down. That's persimmon, and then there's some Ambrosian maple, some barnwood oak, a big slab of oak behind there. But I've got all of this kind of dimension lumber that I'll cut down into strips. This is kind of my scrap pile, but I'll cut them down into strips, different sizes, different widths, whatever. I've got it down to kind of a science. I've made a ton of these. Then I clamp them all together, and these were originally, I should have left them together. I clamp them together to be about that size, which is, I'm gonna guess, a little over 8 inches is about how big it is, because I make these 4 inches by 4 inches. So whenever I clamp together a bunch of the strips, it's usually about 8 inches. So when I cut it in half, it's like 8 1/4. I can get 2 4-inch strips. And then lengthwise, I just kind of go with what is what. So now I've got a whole bunch of these cut and ready to make them. So the next step I'm doing on here is, this is my template. See, template. I basically use this as how thick I want these. So I move my fence over. I like to make it not super tight on the blade right here, because it doesn't really leave much room for error, just in case. So, gosh, I don't know if it's going to show, but I like to back the fence off, I mean a hair. There we go. So, once I cut these boards on this fence set this way, that little bit of error room is where my burn marks, where the blade marks are, and then I can feed these little pieces through the planer to get everything nice and smooth. So I'm gonna cut a couple of these, not holding the camera, so sorry everybody, you don't get to watch until I bring my tripod in. And then you will. So we'll move on to the next step. All right, so saw is not on, but this is one of the pieces that I've pushed through, and the blade has cut it in half. I start with the blade in very small increments, and I go up about 1 inch a time. I'm not cutting that whole piece with one push with this kind of hardwood. Really, even softwood, I don't need to put that much pressure, but you basically have book matching in a sense. So this is going to be because it's too thin for my coasters, so I'll end up making magnets out of this. So I'll come over here, I'll show you, or these little coins. So that is my, see it or not, that's my company. So that's what I do with the extra thin ones, these little coins, And whenever I go to craft fairs or whatever, I lay them out wherever on the table and stuff. So now I take this piece and I'm going to send it through to clean the surface up. This side's pretty clean, but this has the burn marks and stuff like that. It also has little saw marks. My planer has the whatever spiral head upgrade, so it comes out really clean. So that'll be the next process. When I get to the process after this, I will show you where I'm at. So we'll go on from there. Okay, so I've sent all these through the planer and got them all cleaned up pretty good. Then I come over here to my miter saw, or as my good old country boys say, that there chopper saw. So basically I want to square off the ends, but what I like to do, normally you would go to your lowest point, just kind of cut it straight there, but I like to give it a little extra when I cut, something like that. Nothing major, and basically I end up with a bunch of these pieces that end up being scrap. And I've got, you know, every different kind. So, as well as another box down here, those are more square cuts, but I use. But there's not only that kind of scrap, but you know, you've seen this pile of scrap. I use that sort of stuff. Whenever I work with live edge, I always save the edges that I cut off, because the project that I'm doing, you will see how cool this looks. So, on to the next step. All right, as you can see, I've made quite a bit of a little bit of a mess. So, this was a piece of scrap ply that I did some cabinet sort of stuff right over there. So this is some of the leftover, and I'm basically just picking a spot that I feel like is about enough. I could use the whole piece, but I'm gonna just use a little bit. I'm basically gonna cut this on, as we know, it's called the chopper saw, because it chops wood. So let me cut that, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so I got my couple boxes of scrap from all my cutoffs of doing the my coasters, as well as working on live edge stuff all the time. And I have my cutoffs there. And basically, I'm gonna set this camera up as best I can and show you what I do with all this extra scrap stuff. Okay, so if you only saw the rig that I have holding my phone up to film this, you'd be pretty impressed. I should shoot a video on how to do that. So, so basically, I kind of start just making like a little, it's like putting a little puzzle together. So I'm using some of these shapes like that to go back here in the background of everything. I like to get it, you know, laid out the way I want it to look. Something about like that. And then I start taking these. I like to start with the taller ones to go in the back. And some that are kind of have different patterns, different wood colors, combinations. And then when I start getting to smaller ones, I'll start layering them in the front. a couple of these. That's a cool piece right there. Look at that. Isn't that cool? I'm gonna lay that just right there. It's gonna look like a skyline. And then maybe this. Not sure where to put that. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe not use it. But sometimes it likes to fit together. So let me grab this phone and I'll show you what it looks like. It's pretty cool. It's like a city with mountains behind it and a cloud in the air, and I don't know. It's pretty rad. So basically my next step is I'm gonna take some glue, and I kind of try to remember where I put everything, and I start gluing all these down. I'll glue the background mountains down first, the clouds, or cloud I should say. Let those sit for 30 plus minutes. Then I'll do the next row of what I like to call the buildings. Glue those down, let them sit for 20, 30 minutes. And then the last row, let those sit. And then I'm gonna go back and I will cut all this square on my table saw, boop, right back there. And I'll build a little frame that will just attach to the piece and maybe put a hanger on the back. It's super cool. So I will show the finished product shortly. Okay, so I have glued this first bit down, and now I'm gonna start gluing the next layer down across here, and then the third layer. So I'll show you the next step. Okay, so it's not Titebond 2. I'm sure it's Titebond, I just don't know if it's 2 or not. I usually buy it by the gallon and just refill this thing and use it constant. And I use this, and I've been using it for years, because when you put that glue down, you kind of want to spread it out. And then a towel to wipe the edge off. And I forgot my spray bottle. Spray bottle. So if I have some glue squeeze out, I can get it wet and then wipe that off, so I don't have to sand hardened glue, because it's a pain in the butt to sand hardened glue. So these have been glued down for, I'm gonna say an hour. So they're attached, not 100%. So my next step is to get the little smaller pieces. And I know these are overhanging, but I'm gonna end up taking this all over to the table saw and running it through to square everything up. But my next step is gluing all this down. I may even do one more layer. I know it's getting kind of thick, but man, these things, they just look really cool. You know, and I just kind of play around with it and make the city look cooler and cooler. So I'm gonna do this next step, and then I'll get back to you. Okay, so I had to clamp this piece, but I got those all glued down. Let's take it over to the workbench. Yes, this is my workbench, and I know it's disgusting. It's unlike all the other YouTubers, but you know what? This is a workbench. I work, I cut into it, I drill into it, I do all kinds of stuff to it. I've actually caught this on fire before. Yeah, look, there's a spot. You know what? When it gets really bad, I take out the couple screws holding this top down and replace the top. So that's a workbench. I see some of these workbenches on YouTube that look like dining room tables. And I just kind of question whether they're doing much. So anyway, this is where I'm at. Let me unclamp these. So far, so cool. I'm gonna go ahead and I think cut this down and then work on making a little frame for it. and I'll show you the next step. All right, so I just got it all cut, squared up. Crank this down so I don't hit my knuckles on it. So now I need to find something. Maybe. No. I need to find something to make just a simple frame. So I'm gonna pick through all my scrap and whatnot, long strips, try to find something that might make a cool frame, and I'll get back to you. Okay, I settled on walnut. I had this piece. I've got a few pieces of walnut, but I cut about 18 inches. I'm just gonna cut this down to some square pieces just to frame that out. But right now I'm gonna send it through my planer to get 4 sides flattened. So let me do that and continue this. Okay, so this is the back. I just installed a hanger, I guess is what they call it right there. I just framed it. I'm still gonna put a clear coat on it, but I want to hang it and just see how it looks. Ha! That looks pretty cool. There we go. Scrap City, USA. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I had fun putting it together. Maybe the next video, I'll show you how to do something on this wall. Some more of that stuff. Lots of fun. So, Scrap City. All kinds of stuff going on. Look at this. This stuff. Trophies. More coasters. Gosh, I don't even know what else I've got going. And soon to be a humongous project. I'd love to get back to turning some stuff. Got some fun stuff to turn. Anyway, all right, like, subscribe, do your thing, chicken wing. Bye.